So, two North American Tier 3 leagues decided it would be a good idea to pull resources together and just throw everything all into one last-ditch attempt to see if there's any possibility of making it to Tier 1. Wait, you're saying it's called the finale, but not because this is the last tournament they're ever running? I don't know. They called it the finale, and we'll just see what kind of happens from there. I'm Jacob, he's Goose. Welcome to XGS and TPL, the finale. It's Tier 3 in a nutshell with a couple of Tier 2 teams mixed in, and it's about to be about as hectic as you think Tier 2 or Tier 3 has always been in the past. Goose, how you feeling, dude?
I'm feeling great. This is the stage right before and after a T2 event. You just had Challenger Series, you got T1 coming up, so all the free agents are gone and having a lot of roster shuffles and especially a new format with that. I mean, it just couldn't get more exciting than that.
We're about to watch some of the last games before the Siege X patch that you're ever going to see. So that's why we're here, a moment in history to see what the rest of the lower reaches of North America have to offer. Still trying to make it up to Tier 1 at some level. That's what they're fighting for in the end. But we're about to get a bit of a time capsule of just the last couple of games before the entirety of Siege changes with some more quality of life changes, the old ban system. There's a lot of things coming with Siege X happening at the same time as Reload is happening in Rio de Janeiro right now. But we're just going to get one more glimpse before we kiss it goodbye, let it ride off into the sunset like the good old patch that it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really exciting. I think Siege, in a sense, has kind of hit the tipping point before we go all into that new stuff. And I think a lot of these teams also, theoretically, have hit their tipping point and even some of their skill ceiling.
We'll talk about teams first up. It's 6 invited squads and 6 made it through qualifiers. Even though Turtle Tactics did win a tournament to get here in the first place, it's still only 6 actual qualified teams. Shoobs, Core, Turtle, Jinxie Loyals, which is now minus Stompin'. We'll get to more of that in just a little bit. Revelations and Unks, a lot of names that you will be familiar with from the Tier 2 scene, and then a lot of squads that had to fight and claw their way through 2 separate qualifiers over the past couple of weeks to get here in the first place, and they're all split up now by divisions. There's 2 in TPL, there's 6 in TPL, there's 6 in SGS. The way that they're separated isn't 100% down to anything in particular other than there's an even distribution between teams that were invited and teams that made it through qualifiers, and they're all playing in round robin best of 3s in order to see who makes it to playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's just overall really exciting. You have a perfect mix of teams. Not even just both the players. You have a lot of those T2 teams, even SPACESHOOBS roster that beat the current T1 team, JJ and Co, or whatever name they'll go under if they do get picked up. But again, I think this is really a great testing ground, not only for a lot of these newer teams with newer talent. Obviously, Underagers is probably one of the more prominent examples of that, but also it is really a test for a lot of these T2 teams that have made a lot of changes since Challenger Series.
If you've been following along with what Tier 2 looks like in North America, a lot of these names are going to look familiar, but also the names on the teams, for the most part, are mostly the same. Guys like Shoobs, Revelations, Core, Karn, Unks, even some of the Jinxie Loyals team that used to play on M80X, a lot of those faces are still with the teams that they played with in Tier 2. For everybody else, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. Some teams were put together specifically for this tournament. Others have tried to worm their way into leagues like this for a hot minute or have already played in Tier 3 leagues in North America. So if you're in the scene, you will have seen these guys around before. Absolutely nothing here is any surprise to you, but everyone will play everyone in their own division one time, and then we'll see, based on those round robin results, who gets to playoffs in just over a month's time from now.
Yeah, and I think we're also bringing back the play-in format for a couple of those teams that aren't able to fully go into the playoff format. So again, just like Reload, not only is this a glimpse into the future with the teams, but also a new format. You know, we're trying to mix things up. 3 phases. I know in a T3 league that sounds scary, but in theory it should be fun.
Should be fun. Let's get into the first matchup. It's Frozen and Company against SPACESHOOBS, because why else would we start with any other squad? If you can start with Shoobs and give Goose and I the opportunity to rant about them for 3 hours, then we're absolutely going to take it. But it's the freezer, it's Frozen, and a couple of guys getting together through the qualifiers. They made it, only losing 2 maps over the course of qualification. Only lost just 1 series, and it was a best of 1 very, very early on. SPACESHOOBS come in here with an invite. They're not playing with Scoob. They're now playing with Schmink, so it's still 5 guys in the within the scene that you should be very, very familiar with. And ultimately, I'm just looking for reasons to think that it's not going to be a Shoobs 2-0 rollover, because it's still a lot of fun watching Frozen the guys to see what those guys can do.
Yeah, I think the thing about this freezer roster that makes them so good, especially in a qualifier format, is their experience and structure, and especially going up against a lot of teams that not only don't have the experience, but just don't have that structure, because about half of them are pug stacks. It's kind of a situation where you're going to have that upper hand. But going up against a roster like SPACESHOOBS, you're not going to have that upper hand. Not only are you going to be matched, but sometimes Shoobs are going to be able to play that structure and play that team play even better than this roster has. But to be fair, I mean, this is a roster that has a lot of potential.
I'm gonna petition everybody in media days to take pictures the exact same way that Vel did for this one. I don't know if I've seen a better one than that in a hot minute. Him and Ark, especially, just all right. No, I really don't think anything's about to top that. The Freezer came in. They only lost one map over the course of their qualification run through the open portion. Through closed, they only lost one map there too, so they're looking pretty good. The only maps that they lost were Lair and Chalet. Everything else, they've got undefeated streaks on Bank and Border. They were looking pretty good on Clubhouse too, so they're well-rounded so far as we can tell. But again, the quality that they would have played in those qualifiers, a little bit up in the air. Their opponents are a little bit different because SPACESHOOBS played all 3 CL qualifiers to make it in. They were 3-2 in the Swiss stage, even though they had one forfeit win over Akron. Technically, they sent JJ and company to the lower bracket. They were 5th, 6th all the way through Challenger Series. So for anybody for the Freezer to go up against in their first matchup, for it to be Shoobs, all I gotta say is Godspeed, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you even said that this probably might be a rollover, a 2-0. I think if there is any chance, it just simply comes down to the maps. But I mean, just looking at SPACESHOOBS overall, this is a team with a lot of stories. Obviously, after all the way back, I believe it was Element 2, having a little bit of struggles, not being able to even qualify into Element 3. Eventually, they completely reconstructed their roster, then eventually joined SPACESHOOBS. And then on top of that, having Teddy, a player who went absolutely on a heater last event in Challenger Series, kind of one of his homecoming games where he really proved himself. He even talked about how individually as a player, he really just upped the notch. And this is a roster that a couple months back, you'd say, oh, they're probably a top 6, top 8 team, but this really is looking like a roster that is scary.
Only difference here is Scoob is now playing for Soars, so the exact 5-stack composition that they had from Challenger isn't here. Shmeik is in Scoobs' place, but they did have some battles against JJ and company, the eventual winners of that tournament. They faced one another in the very first qualifier, the first round of the first qualifier of Challenger Series, and JJ and company won, and then they played on later on in the series, and the first time in playoffs that they ever faced one another was when this team sent the eventual winners down to the lower bracket and forced them to make a run of the ages all the way up to a grand final victory to qualify for tier 1. So Shoobs absolutely have the sauce. They've got what it takes, but at a tier 3 level, that's expected. At a tier 2 level against more sufficient competition, it's a bit of a different story. So again, it's not a question of how, like, are they going to make it to playoffs and in the finale? It's just a matter of how fast they're going to do it.
Yeah, and again, I spoke about how this was either going to be a close matchup or a very one-sided affair, depending on the maps. Freezer making sure that they take off Lair. That is a map that Shoobs really played into in Challenger Series, a map that I believe they have around like a 2-1 record. They are favored on it, so really good. And then Shoobs picking the Chalet, a map that they, again, really love. One of their only times that they lost was against JJ and Co. But again, with that Pro League caliber, especially since it was their first time meeting. But again, I really do think SPACESHOOBS isn't a team that has a really small map pool. And it's just, table after table, point after point of just everything going in the way of SPACESHOOBS.
So no Lair. Freezer decided to take that off the board because they recognize that Shoobs are 4-0 on that map over the past couple months. Chalet, again, they've only lost it the one time, and that was to JJ and company a couple of months back, but they're 6-1 on it over the past couple of months. Bank is the second pick. Freezer played it 3 times in their qualifier run, haven't lost it a single time. Shoobs only played it 1 time in the same span, and they've lost it 1 time. So 2 very obvious strength picks for both of them, and it still leaves 3 maps left. There's a couple options still in the pool here, but with Border off the board, Cons, Labs, as far as everything else that's still left up here, I feel like you could probably get a pretty decently even decider at this point.
Yeah, I really do think you have maps like Clubhouse still on the board, even Skyscraper. There, we're going to Skyscraper, one of the not the options that I would have chose. Honestly, I would have thought that we would have maybe went to a club or a cafe, but the Freezer saying to themselves that we would rather take SPACESHOOBS to Skyscraper over Clubhouse. And to be fair, that is a fair point. This is a map that, sure, SPACESHOOBS, they've had plenty of time to play on it, but in recent history, at least on game days, they don't really have that historic of a past.
So only 1 time on Skyscraper for Freezer. Shoobs, don't ever worry about playing it. So I think the option might have been, if Freezer know what they're doing on Sky through qualifiers and Shoobs haven't played it quite yet, they're kind of banking on the Shoobs maybe not being as confident on a map like that if they even need to worry about going to a decider. But again, it comes down to really how map 2 goes. I think the advantage is firmly in Shoobs' favor on Shell, if only from a map win percentage rate. And again, the fact that the only team that Shoobs have lost to on Shell A in what I think since February, basically at this point, has been JJ and company. For Freezer, the bank pick also makes a ton of sense, but if Shoobs have only lost it one time and that was against tier 2 quality player, to do it against a team like Freezer, who haven't been together for all that long, even if they made a great qualifier run a couple of weeks ago, I wonder how confident they actually feel in their bank in order to make sure that they pull this thing out with a quick 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back. One of the games that I personally VOD review was Freezer on bank. And I think it's kind of a situation where I noticed one of their biggest problems was, especially on the roam in the extension, is they played really isolated. They played disconnected. You know, sometimes they'd be able to catch a player off guard, or other times the attack would be able to isolate them. But again, it's SPACESHOOBS. Not only are they a structured team, but they've been kind of, you know, dipping their toe in the water or playing a more flexible, more fluid play style. 3 of their players being on a flex and entry position. It's kind of a recipe for, if there's one player just isolated from the rest of the team, it is going to be easy pickings for SPACESHOOBS. So that's something that the Freezer need to be absolutely careful of going on a map 2.
Let's talk Shell A real quick, though. We'll get to bank when we need it, but to start off on a really good map for Shoobs initially, the better team on a map that they really like as the first map in a series. Is there a particular scoreline you think within the first half that if you saw Freezer get, then you'd think, you know what, maybe we'll have a really good, strong, competitive second? Or if we get to a 4-2, is even that not enough for you to think that Shoobs are going to do anything except a roll on this map?
Honestly, from what I've seen specifically on the defense from the Freezer, I think they at least need a 4-2. Not to say that their attack is necessarily bad, but if they get a 3-3, God forbid, going to the point where they are in the deficit, knowing how good they are on the defense, then that is a really big sign of just some problem going on. Even, sure, it's just, you know, one map, bank plays differently. I mean, Chalet is a relatively, you know, a map that favors both sides. It doesn't really lean one way too much.
We'll jump into this one in a hot second. We're still waiting for everybody to jump back into the lobby. So we'll get a, I think, I mean, at this point,
yeah,
for Shoobs, congratulations on getting here, getting the invite. Love that for you. We all knew you were probably going to end up being here. How different are you going to look without Scoob, though? For me, that felt like a heart and soul moment, given everything that Scoob's been through, for him to not be here anymore. Do you just suddenly lose what made this team great, or is XGS going to have to worry about carrying all that load all by himself now? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think going into it from what I've seen, you know, XGS, anybody from the team can correct me. I believe Scoob left. He just personally felt like he wanted to go to a different system.
He said on Twitter that he at least wasn't kicked, is what I think I saw.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I saw. And just knowing the past of this team, I don't think it's a situation, especially with how he played. He was a player where he had a lot of clutch moments. He was the player that gave a lot of that oomph, that momentum when SPACESHOOBS needed. But on the turn side of things, I mean, not only is XGS a phenomenal leader, but you have a player like Eddie who not only can really shut down those kills in the entry department, but he's also just a really fun guy who can really push and give this team motivation. Just get that mental in a good space if they are down in the dumps.
I'll give Volsper credit too. I still have memories of that one ghost of a play against M80X on Consulate, their last map in Challenger Series. Was it an ace downstairs on basement, or was it just a 4K in the hallway because nobody was looking at? Volsper took full advantage. It was a great play, but that's just like burned into my brain because it might have been Fett's reaction to it, full stop, honestly. But Volsper also has had his moments in the past couple of months. So it's great that this team is still sticking together, but I feel like it's one of those cases where because they're the known commodity, they performed well enough. Fifth, sixth in Challengers, nothing to sneer at given the level of competition that was in that bracket at the end of the day. I want them to keep on sticking it out and seeing how far they can go. This might be one of those teams that if they were to break up at some point in the future, it would probably devastate me the most. So have a good event here, get through the finale, and make it to playoffs before everybody else. That's the expectation for Shoobs. And I just speaking from my perspective, I certainly hope that it keeps going here.
Yeah, and I think, you know, both groups are relatively, I don't want to say we have a defined group of death, but at the same time, I think because you have a mixture of set teams who, to be fair, SPACESHOOBS did finish top 6, but they also had their fair share of problems. They beat JJ and Co. and then lost their next 2 games back to back because of really crucial problems that they couldn't really have.
All right, we're getting everybody back into the lobby. Give us one hot sec. We'll come back after a break, and we'll start on Chalet. Don't go anywhere.
we stay in control in the name of love.
The circle closes, the end begins. The finale is upon us, and Shoobs and the Freezer are the two teams to open it up. TPL and XGS decided, yep, we're going to pool resources and throw a whole bunch of Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams all into one big Thunderdome all at the same time. The Freezer only lost 2 maps in their qualification run, and Shoobs are coming off a 5th, 6th performance straight out of Challenger Series, where they did beat JJ and Company at least one time. So it's finally time to get this bad boy underway. Capitao, Deimos, and Azami +1 as we start on Shoob's pick of Chalet for map 1.
And what a way to not only start this amazing event with all shields on board. Blackbeard, Monty, not even a Blitz or a Fuse being banned. We have all the shields able to be being played. SPACESHOOBS, they decided that they wanted to ban that Deimos, a very understandable ban. And then the Freezer starting on the defense, banning that Capitao, a very useful operator to really just push out those defender positions, especially in those crucial holds that just simply are there to deny time from SPACESHOOBS. So I understand, and I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad idea, but at the same time, we may see this just kind of divulge into just what team can play shields better. And so far, SPACESHOOBS have been a consistently good team playing not only shields, but specifically Blackbeard.
Though, funny enough, the 2 ops that would see the most bans on Shield on this map was Monty and Blitz, and Blackbeard was like way further down the stat sheet in terms of which Shield ops saw the most bans. The most plays, at least when they were available, is a bit of a different story though. But the other bans, I will say, definitely make sense. You would play Azami literally every round on defense given the ability to if she was still up, but she's gone. Mute will get played a ton in this case given the bans that are still up, except for what Freezer are doing. They've not opted to bring in this time around. So like double wall denial, hoping that no one picks a Ying in this case. No one is, but there it is. Volsper, first shield on the board, is not either of the two that typically get frequently banned on this map. It's Blackbeard instead. Double hard breach. I don't want to say that this first round looks telegraphed based on the opposite SPACESHOOBS are trying to bring out, but it does look pretty obvious about what they were trying to attempt here.
Oh yeah, I mean, a very heavy extension from the Freezer on that top flow over by Librarian top mez, and also looks like they're going to be able to get this wall open. Not just for now, that tuber out coming out for now is going to be just shutting it off. I don't think they're going to be able to get this Cade Claw off. They might be able to. I'm not exactly sure about the timing there. But again, you still have 2 players on this top floor to worry about. This is the first step that the Freezer wants SPACESHOOBS to approach them by. And again, both of these players are playing very disconnected. So if SPACESHOOBS can realize this and potentially cut them off, that's 2 free easy picks.
Minute gone, still no one's gotten into the building, but it looks like Volsper's making the case to be the first one in. Look for an opportunity. Arc jumps out, doesn't find anything, but he doesn't know that the Blackbeard was literally right below him, and that sound cover gives him enough to jump right into the window, hit dining, and then start working over some of the horizontal pressure. Blackbeard downstairs can make a little bit of noise and be more of a distraction, but you've still got Hard Breach needs to open up walls, and you've brought Rams specifically to give you the ability to use the vertical control to your advantage, but enough of the Freezer's firepower has been placed upstairs that it's wise to try and deal with it first, even though it does look like if SPACESHOOBS wanted to, they could go straight to site once the walls come open.
Yeah, and whether or not they know about those roamers, as of right now, they're just not really trying to approach them, whether or not they're just simply ignoring them, trying their best to go for this site hit. Schmink also trying to get that first blood over by Boiler, but with this shield, you can't really do much there. Bolino just taking a bit of damage, but he's able to get one, but the Blackbeard, he's there to meet him, but Zez with the cross.
Somehow the Blackbeard gets down, and it just gives Valeno the opportunity to get 2, make it 3 off the hatch real quick. He's holding on to Boiler Room with his bare hands, and he'll do all 4 by himself. He didn't have to kill the Blackbeard. Someone else made life easy for him, but he just sticks in and gets a 4K to kick us off on the finale.
What a statement from the Freezer, and specifically a 4K in that round, Valeno. The entire round just died right there behind that shield on Boiler. And that's a round where, I spoke about they had a very heavy roam on that top floor over by Library and top Mez, even going all the way over to Solarium. And SPACESHOOBS never really addressed that. They never really applied pressure. And it's kind of a situation, especially the context of that Boiler position, where SPACESHOOBS either one, didn't have the info, or they weren't all on the same page communicating to the best they could. And not only did they miss a lot of opportunities, but they allowed for Valeno to get 3 untraded kills in that last kill. There's only so much you can do. But again, it's kind of a situation. Not only do you have somebody over in pit, but then you have a Blackbeard, and it's such an easy position where he's relatively isolated, and you should be able to push that out. But because there was just a lack of communication, it was a position that completely lost the round for SPACESHOOBS.
I was also about to make a comment about how Ram just threw a drone in his direction as if he was trying to use it as misdirection for a second, and Valeno just stood in there and took it. I don't even think, if you get a drone thrown at you, do you take damage from that because it's such a heavy son of a gun? Yeah. So I'm like, cool, if you don't have flashes left, then just do that and hope for the best. Not only does it not work, the Blackbeard that then comes bottom west main doesn't even get shot by Valeno, he gets shot from blue, and then he just cleans house from that point. So, phenomenal opening for Freezer. Valeno, man of the hour, will back up for a second because it's him against a Blackbeard again. But I'll back off the solar position. SPACESHOOBS will play windows, a little bit more pressure down towards garage. But they've opted for the dining site, at least for round 2. So we'll see how fast SPACESHOOBS are able to put pressure on this top floor, something that they didn't do nearly as much as they probably needed to in round 1.
Yeah, and so far a lot of this pressure, almost all of it, is simply just coming from this top Solarium side. Also, a double window inside of Master. There is no back pressure. There's nothing really to force the Freezer to really push out or worry about behind them. So they can just stare right at where a majority of these SPACESHOOBS players are, and then just either waste time, waste their utility, and there's nothing really here from SPACESHOOBS to push these players out, whether it be info, rotating a player over. It does really look like they're just going to be using these Grimbees, this throwable utility, and then eventually the Blackbeard to potentially get a first pick, but Zez just running in front of the window because of a nade.
Still nobody's gotten into the building yet. It took Volsper about a minute and a half to finally get to top solar, and there is a trade back. Arc gets 1 before he's knocked out of commission. But it's still a ton of window pressure waiting for Freezer to move into their own crosshairs. Schmick's hiding in a tree. All right, it's going to be one of those games. That's fine. Still plenty of time for Shoobs to make their move, though. Freezer might not, I mean, at this point, probably a bad call to go anywhere close to a window because of how much Shoobs are just occupying those spots. So Frozen and Raki will head downstairs. Valeno can still play hero up top if he feels like it, but for SPACESHOOBS, they've got a lot of map control they need to take, and they've only got about a minute to go.
Yeah, you have lost Volsper on that Blackbeard, though, so that, easy spearhead is not going to be available. And Frozen cutting off another one, now making a 3v3.
45 left. Siege can hold a couple different things. He knows there's one bottom west main. 417 goes off. That engagement's happening cross map. But now they have taken some top floor. There's hatch control. 30 seconds to go. But Siege might need to get to position to plant sooner rather than later because Toaster still occupies that top floor. Raki will get Smink upstairs and then scamper back away. Toaster's now been downed. Suddenly Siege and Raki in a 1v1 looking for each other, and it's the SMG to win at close range. That's 2 really good rounds for Freezer to win back-to-back to kick off Chalet. And Shoobs are trying to find an answer. They look a little out of sorts right now.
I mean, that is a round where SPACESHOOBS had a phenomenal lead. Sure, going into that execution on the top floor, trying to get that vertical, which eventually SPACESHOOBS did get. They lost their Blackbeard, but they also got 2 players. But then when it came down to the execution on the bomb site specifically, 1v1s after 1v1, specifically Teddy going down those Solarium stairs, giving Frozen that easy one, then even going all the way back to the very last kill of just specifically Exige playing all alone inside of Trophy. It's a situation where, again, that communication doesn't seem to be there because there's a lot of these players making rotates where the cut should be getting hold, and then XG's just completely lost. His head not even attached to his body, giving easy 1v1.
The thread seems like it's Shoobs taking a long time to get into the building, which, granted, it's a good play on defense if you're able to keep people out of Chalet for as long as possible. It's kind of like Border in that respect. But because it took Shoobs about a minute in the first round and about a minute and a half in the second to just get somebody inside off a window rappel, feels like it's a speed thing that they have to work through for these first couple of rounds at least. And again, Chalet still, it's not completely defender-sided, but it still gives attacking teams so much of an opportunity to move through and take space. So they should at least understand that that's where their primary issue lies, and then once they do that and they're able to start working on ISO, getting some defenders really bad and out of position. There's Teddy with the first one. There we go. So Arc had one trade in the first round and then dies first. It's a great opening for Shoobs, but can they capitalize it and really start to work over this map pressure?
Yeah, I really do like that SPACESHOOBS have fallen off of that Blackbeard. Obviously, that first round, it wasn't necessarily the problem, or was it the second one, but they just weren't getting the use out of it, especially going into a master bedroom attack. You do want to just have a lot of that extra utility. XGS, though, swapping onto the Monty, more of a present or pressure, just overall being a lot more passive. But again, it's another position where the Freezer is making their extended hold very well known. A lot of utility castle barricades that mirror all the way down in this kitchen. This is a position that the Freezer wants SPACESHOOBS to try to at least attempt to clear out. But so far, again, the third round in a row where the Freezer want to draw that attention is just simply not working, or at least SPACESHOOBS not falling into it.
Got Mez control pretty quick here. And it was the Bandit to dive first, so no opportunity to break that there. Ram just comes right in off the drone, and Schmink's got two off the rip. Looking for another one. There's no rotate opportunity, and instead he'll get team killed by Teddy. Hello, what are we trying to go for here? Instead, Exceed is going for plant. Vlino and Rocky now have to retake in a really bad spot, but they are at least close by enough to maybe grab one free pick here. Ace off the mirror window will dive first, but Monty's there to get the call. Teddy's got another one, and Valeno falls quickly, so now Racky's got three more to find. Toaster on the outside. All that intel from Monty is just feeding him exactly where he needs to look. Really quick execute, but there we go. Shoobs are on the board now.
I mean, a phenomenal little, micro play there, understanding that they could just hit that go button. Ram using one of her boogie drones to just barge her way into office and was able to get two free picks of it in another round where SPACESHOOBS didn't try to directly play into that extension or the roam that the Freezer really wanted them to. And that time around, it did work out. A phenomenal play there by the Ram. And to be fair, those players, aside from the one inside of Office and Piano, were relatively disconnected. I mean, they didn't even get the Office wall open, nor even attempt to get it. They didn't worry about it. They just said, you know what, let's just send our Ram in here. Hopefully we can get at least one entry pick. They got one more than they were initially hoping for, and then using that Monty to then clear an additional path for them, allowing for them to get bombed down.
I mean, the only way that play works is if Monty is in Piano, because he went to double so quick and he had that pressure. You've got Piano guy looking at him. You don't have Piano... what they had to do, but it's like the one time you ever see someone rush through a barricade as soon as it's been broken is like maybe a blitz. I don't know if I've seen a Ram be that brazen, and especially for it to get two kills off a rip when Freezer's not expecting it. But Shoobs had the element of surprise, and now Freezer going to go back downstairs.
Yeah, and this time around, instead of bringing that Thatcher, they're going to be putting all the reliance on not only this nade, but also just two EMP charges in the pocket of Exige, but not going to work. You still have Schmink with a couple. This is going to continue to be a problem. Even when they had Thatcher, I don't think they initially even got this snowmobile wall open. They're just going to give up. They're just going to go away. They're not going to try much time and pressure. But keep in mind, the last time that they lost this, I don't even know where Booster lost his life. Bolsper, that was able to get the trade. Arc with another. In the Freezer, they're trying to play aggressive, but SPACESHOOBS have done a phenomenal job at punishing it.
So Arc was just trying to make his move as fast as he could, and now puts them in a 3v4 against Shoobs. Brown might be able to deny for as long as he can here, but it may not be for all that long, and K doesn't have a claw that he's able to put on that end, and there's, again, no hard breach that they need to concern themselves with. There's not even can openers open in this case. Still upstairs. Whoa, hang on. Warden might have a fight with the Blackbeard up top. Instead, he'll scamper back away. Totally looked like, I mean, nope, they're about to pressure. Instead, it's both shields trying to track down the Warden. Teddy downstairs will claim Frozen, and there goes the Warden finally. It all rests on Zez downstairs trying to deny. Everything's falling apart now suddenly. And Shoobs, 2 very quick rounds where they know, hey, if we just push, we have a shot here.
Yeah, it really is the definition of SPACESHOOBS just getting their foot fully in the door. They, teased it a little bit the first 2 rounds. They never fully committed to anything. And again, I talked about those communication issues. But back-to-back rounds where there have been initial phases where the Freezer tried to get really aggressive, and SPACESHOOBS, one, punished it, and then had an advantage, and even went for the execution. I think even that initial engagement with the Blackbeard and the Monty on the player over by Kitchen was a perfect example of just how that communication has been now dwindled down to a T. We didn't see that in the first 2 rounds. A lot of those easy engagements, those easy picks just slipped by the fingers of SPACESHOOBS because they simply weren't all on the same page and playing together.
2 rounds to fill your opponent. Now, it's not terrible, though. I think, especially against a team that you'd... Let's be real, not much footage exists on these guys. So if you're trying to figure out how to play, I mean, it was a... They were 7-1 in the best of 1 open qualifier, playing mostly teams you probably haven't heard of. And then when they played in the best of 3s, it's mostly at that point kind of word of mouth, or if you play them in scrims or something. So for Shoobs to take 2 rounds, figure out exactly how fast they want to move through the map, don't blame them. And now they know, if we push hard with shields, there's kind of nothing that Freezer can do. Yeah. We just have to get the shields in the building first, and then we can abuse the meta against these guys pretty effectively.
And I think, that is a really perfect example, because if you even look at this lineup from the Freezer, they don't really have a hard counter. They don't really have anything hard to deny the space taking that these shields have, especially round after round. Not only have SPACESHOOBS really been forcing the issue on these shields, but they've been bringing double shields, whether it be a Monty and a Blackbeard, or with this round specifically, XGS on the Blitz, and then Volsberg just behind that Blackbeard. It's kind of a thing where you can really see SPACESHOOBS are trying to take the points of the map where Freezer aren't really playing. They're not playing these extensions.
Your options for taking Library are Capitao, who's banned, or do a whole bunch of really fast shield pressure, which is unbanned. So that seems like the ability here for Raki to hold on to top floor as long as possible, but Frozen trying to hold this cross angle top mez for as long as he can, but there's even going to be balcony pressure. Shoobs now understand the pace that they have to move at here, and it's already going to force Frozen to come back off because it's not worth it to lose his life at that point. It may even force Raki, the top of Library Stars, to fall back to site pretty quickly too, but he's still holding resolute. Siege gets a little bit more info on that player, and then the Blackbeard will come in and they can move through double and try to take Library. But it's not just them. Even if you were to lose stairs pressure, you've still got Veleno holding the mirror window, top hatch, just waiting for someone to move in. Someone who isn't a shield, please just come to him so we can get a shot off. But that's where the util dump's coming in, and he's still alive. All those frag grenades get spent, and he's still alive here.
He's wasted 4 nades, only 1 nade still in the pocket. In Arc, he's able to take down the Finca. And now the disadvantage going into the favor of the Freezer still haven't been able to push out Veleno, and now they're losing Siege over by top blue, but Schmeek is able to get it out. And Veleno, he's stuck here. He can't get out. His cross is being held, and they almost let him slip.
He stayed up for so long. Art can at least get revived. No, he won't. Top of this staircase and get him instead. So now it's Zez, last man alive again, and Exceed has been revived. It's 2 shields and 2 other guns against a Miro who doesn't have a nitro. So he'll just hold the position that they probably don't expect him to sit in at 30 seconds left. And Shoobs are still fireplace stairs waiting for their chance. They have plenty of time. They'll drone. They find him. There comes the blitz. It's all over. Nothing that Zez can do. Exceed, the man himself, will take point. And Shoobs have now got their first lead of the map.
We can really talk about how SPACESHOOBS have been moving so fast, been setting an absolute just, race car of a pace here, and how Freezer haven't necessarily been able to deal with it. But on the turn side of things, the Freezer have been relatively moving really slow, especially on these extensions. I mean, specifically that Jaeger inside a box holding that Mira probably should have dropped down a little bit earlier before he had 3 players in front of him. I understand he wanted to try to waste as much time. He wasted all of the nades in this pocket of SPACESHOOBS. That was great. But then you jump down. That's kind of a position where if you don't fall back soon enough, they're going to have the cross. Blackbeard watching that was able to get him. It's kind of a situation because the freezer is moving so slowly. SPACESHOOBS, they're able to catch a lot of these players on the cross when they try to make their way back to the bomb site in least favorable position.
Just as a reminder, SPACESHOOBS are 6-1 on Chalet in both Challenger and Challenger qualifiers. Freezer are 1-1 over just their qualifier run to get into the finale in the first place. So, map will always favor Shoobs. Their pick, Freezer opted for defense. If they're able to get at least one here, get a 3-3 and get out of what has been a half that has completely run away from them at this point. Even though there's only a 1-round difference, those last 3 have set a pace that they've not been able to keep up with on defense. If they're able to get 3, switch over, I'd say it looks a lot better for Frozone and company. But Shoobs, these last couple rounds, it's been all them.
Yeah, and just even looking at this lineup from SPACESHOOBS, this isn't necessarily a lineup that is heavy, like, let's just run right into the bomb site. Obviously, there's a lot of execution utility, but it's more utility to try and cut off and disconnect a lot of these players on the defense. Obviously, you have Shmeek throwing out a couple of his gadgets to be able to get a couple of those shields up. Already getting the Kid Claw too, and then you have Volsper, a player who can hold that cross behind that shield in a very safe position. In another round where you don't really see SPACESHOOBS putting a lot of pressure, a lot of effort and thought into trying to clear this vertical because they don't really want to. That's not their game plan. They're going to try to go from basement up. But with a kill like that from Valino, not having Shmeek on the board is going to completely change how they essentially play this entire round. Ooh.
Honestly, he might be able to get that nitro again. And I'm not saying swinging trophy window against an actively firing 417 is a good idea, but he's able to make it work. Arc's pressure is the next one that they've been able to suss out. Grim plus pings, presumably. At least top solar to flush him out of the corner. And that seems like what they're still trying to work on, in addition to looking for any of this vertical pressure. And they do finally get to him. So Toaster comes back and grabs the trade. So working through more of this top floor, now it all falls on Raki to see how long he's able to hold on to Master, if possible. I think he probably saw ahead there. Exceeds will grab Valeno, and he's got 2, and the only guys left up are the guys who were off-site up 1 floor above, looking for an opportunity to grab another pick here before Shoobs move in. But they're off-site. This is creating an opportunity for Volsper to go right into sight and just plant this sucker as fast as possible. Raki doesn't kill the planter. He'll knock Exceed down instead, but still 3 good guns and still window pressure up here because Shoobs know that there's still guys on vertical right now, and now both of them are cloistered up, looking for an opportunity to come down trophy stairs and try to isolate at least one pick. Shoobs are a little far apart from one another, so maybe they've got a shot, but time is dwindling quickly. Hatch drop comes in, Volsper grabs the one there, and Toaster cross map will grab Frozen. That's a 4-2 half. That's exactly what they drew up. At least for those first 2 rounds it wasn't, but for those last 4, textbook Chalet for Shoobs.
I mean, I specifically talk about it as soon as I saw that lineup that they weren't ever going to apply pressure on that vertical. Obviously, they held some crosses. They were able to get that player over by the doorway from Solarium into bathroom. But their focus was going from basement up, using the window inside of Trophy, disconnecting those players on the vertical, and then just hitting the site. And that is exactly what they did. Should have tried to either rotate into bathroom or down to site a lot earlier on, but because it was an easy pick for SPACESHOOBS. And Jacob, I told you that the Freezer were very confident in their defense and that they needed at least a 4-2 defensive half, and they kind of got it, but the other way around.
Right, they got the inverse, and that's more the problem. If they are a defensive bastion, they didn't show it on a map that's still, I mean, even if it's only a 54% split, stats still say Chalet leans more defensively. There's only one map, I think, through SI that was attacker-sided. Do you remember which one that one was? I'm quizzing you now. You sure you don't know? Positive?
Club? I want to say which one was it?
It was Border.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know. I thought it was like a trick question. Border is just too easy.
Border is too easy. There's just there aren't places where you're able to just kind of sit back in a corner, which you'd think the same would kind of be the case with Chalet, and there aren't places to hide in a corner with, I mean, if you had a Capitao up, then you're just flushing those corners out, especially library all day. But when you've got all shields left on the board, I think we kind of knew coming into this one, with all of them left up, it was going to be chaos for Chalet.
And I really talked about how because essentially every shield has been left up, that was going to be one of the major factors of what team was going to be able to play it. So far, to start off, the Freezer are bringing both a BB and a Monty, but we don't know how they're going to be able to use it. SPACESHOOBS, I think we can both confidently say they played into those shields very well, but so far, especially Arc playing very isolated relatively on this Blackbeard is a little bit worrisome for me because that's an easy opportunity for whether it be Teddy or another SPACESHOOBS defender to just isolate and get an easy 1v1.
We'll see how well the Freezer ends up playing shields because they brought an Ella, I looked like, to try and deal with some of that shield play at the back end of their first half, and it didn't quite work out. So we'll see if Shoobs are able to respond to the way that Freezer plays shields and see if they need to bring out something more specifically to deal with those shields. They've got traps, a little bit of intel denial, wall denial, plus area. They've got a good mix of everything on the board. Teddy he will have a free pick on the ram if he's looking in the right direction, but he's not. Raki opens up the kill feed. Still plenty of time, long angles all the way in. There's no one in kitchen. Not sure if Freezer know that yet, but they're able to at least hold this long angle from a good distance here. And an ACOG will just make sure no one's able to go back into the cross. Rocky downstairs will find Volsper, but only the feet. He'll be able to work back up West Main and at his convenience here. But he'll stick back and hold on to A side. Everyone now for SPACESHOOBS has come back down. And we'll see if the Freezer are able to make a move here with 50 seconds to go.
Yeah, no back pressure for the Freezer, so SPACESHOOBS, they can just sit back, hold this, and eventually Arky's going to drop down, but he's going to miss that first initial kill.
We've got Pillar, Blue, everyone on Shoobs is in a different position, but Freezer still have man advantage, so they need to find a way to use it effectively. No one's given him a vertical cross yet. All they've been able to do is something off a hatch drop. Smink will grab Frozen. You've got one shield down, but you've still got a Blackbeard. 20 seconds to go. How do they move in here? Are they going for pillar control first? There's only one back down there. Valeno will grab a trade. Shamika's going to hold on to Blue for all he's worth. Zez does give it back to the Freezer, though, because now they've moved downstairs. They've got B bomb control. That's exactly where Ram's trying to plant from the outside. Zez has got another one, and that crossfire is exactly what they were looking for. They get in, they get bombed down, and suddenly Shoobs are scrambling, trying to figure out where they are. And all they're doing is planting at the bottom of the staircase, and that Blackbeard, turns out he was in the perfect spot.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very great start for the Freezer on their attack. Obviously, I spoke so highly of their defense, but it's not like they're necessarily a horrible attacking team. Phenomenally reading not only the positions of SPACESHOOBS, but also their own positions, understanding that they had a really strong cross with a player inside of Connector, another one outside of Snowmobile Breach, and then obviously being able to get that plan down on bottom fireplace stairs was a really powerful spot where SPACESHOOBS never really had oversight to deny that plan, especially wasting two of those C4s onto that Blackbeard. Sure, you did lose your Monty, but you still had that BB to hold that cross. And it's kind of a situation where it was throughout the entirety of that round, Freezer always had the control, and SPACESHOOBS never were really able to get the one leg up on that positioning.
Blackbeard is also the perfect operator to send into Connector and just have him hold angles. Like, you can get a bit of intel, or you can have him whip his gun up and peek for a second. Like, that's the perfect guy to send into a potential suicide mission and get as much as he possibly could to relay back to the attack. And I'm also curious to, if we watch that round back, was it a quick call to have them go back to Garage Breach and have Zez grab kills and just hold the crossfires waiting for Freezer to try and plant on that side, to plant in Snowmobile? Or was that the plan all along and we just didn't see it until the very, very end? Because if that's an audible, it was a very well-timed audible, but if that was the way that it was planned, it also worked out really well. So yeah, for the Freezer, great start to your attack, no matter how it came about.
Yeah, obviously, SPACESHOOBS not going to be going back down to that basement position. This time around, it looks like they're going to be defending that master bomb site. A very heavy extension over inside a library. A very similar hold to what Freezer did in their time defending this bomb site. And you can see that, contrary to what SPACESHOOBS did, the Freezer really putting pressure on this extension, playing right into what the SPACESHOOBS want them to do. And theoretically, SPACESHOOBS should be prepared for this. A lot of utility, three-man bodies over here, but Zez with the opening onto Schmeek is something that they probably didn't necessarily expect.
All right, so library control is the big factor here. They take Mudroom and they use it. Now Exceed is gone, and your options for defense are super limited at this point. Teddy will hold on to Piano, and Volsper will grab one and then duck back around, so he'll make the long rotate after taking down Nomad. Valeno's already done his job, though. A couple air drabs, grab one of the first picks into the Mud Breach. Sorry, not the mud breach. There's no breach in mud. He went into mud, grabbed a kill and left. That's what he did. But still 3 guys for Shoobs. Enough firepower. But not really any area denial still left up here. Except for the nitro cell from Toaster. So Freezer are in a good spot. Second attacking round in a row where they've had man advantage leaning into their execute. Nitro comes out and gets shot. And it was also aimed directly at a Blackbeard, so it might not have worked. Honestly, Goose, I think this entire round comes down to whether this one flank from Volsper is able to even the odds, and for right now, it does.
You also have Raki on Solarium stairs trying to play spoilers of his own, but Volsper still downstairs, and this is something that is going to constantly be in the back of the minds of Freezer, whether they want to just hit the go button on the players on the bomb site or try and single this player out.
Had an opportunity, and he wasn't able to make anything of it. So now Toaster will stick back as far as he possibly can on Office. Does he go to the window? No, he'll get caught by Arc before he can make a move. So now Volsper's come back up and he's got to do something, but he can't. So even if the Freezer were looking at a couple different directions, Shoobs aren't able to make them pay. And that's 2 rounds in a row, but the early man count really helped the Freezer.
Yeah, and you know, even taking away the inability for SPACESHOOBS to win that early advantage, taking this time out, there are a lot of problems. 2 of the main problems is, one, in that early half of the round, SPACESHOOBS take a lot of isolated engagements. 1vx's. Luckily for them, I guess you can't really say luckily, they are 1v1s, but it's a situation where Freezer easily could double up and force those 1vx's. And then going into the execution phase, where the SPACESHOOBS have to try and deny that plant, they play very back heavy, where they just set up their defense. So they force the Freezer to just go for a one-dimensional push. Sure, you had a little bit of a back pressure on the Solarium stairs for a little bit, but it's kind of a situation where SPACESHOOBS are just sitting back, allowing for the Freezer to take the control they need to get this plant down. And I don't think they're playing the aggression when they need to, playing way too aggressive in the early phase, especially in isolated positions, and then playing too passive going into the later round.
Take a timeout and figure out where things are kind of going awry this past couple of rounds. The idea for the flank from Volsper was honestly a really good one, and I feel like if Mira ducks back out the balcony to try to go for a pick on big window, there's probably a chance that that works before Freezer are able to react, because their brains are just thinking look through the breach. They're not thinking look at the window. There honestly felt like there were opportunities for Shoobs. If they did something crazy, it probably could have worked out. But playing it within their structure, within their extension, that feels like that's where Freezer have been able to take them apart, so to speak. Even if just very slowly. It's been past 2 rounds have been 1 opening kill untraded, and it takes a long time for Shoobs to do anything about that first frag. And Freezer opened up in a 5v3 immediately, and Shoobs were just kind of sent scrambling. So I think it's pretty obvious to anybody who's watching the game what the issue is. But Freezer have said, you had a really good first half, but we're about to come in and set the tone for the second consecutive half. In just 1 map, they've opened up with 2 straight rounds in both halves so far. So now Shoobs have to have some sort of response here.
Yeah, and for now, one of those micro responses, micro change, is going to be Exige bringing out this clash. This is an answer, especially in Challenger Series, they consistently brought out when they weren't able to necessarily deal with aggressive teams taking so much space. And talk about aggressive, Volino is just in West Main, and Freezer, they have site control.
Waiting for an opportunity to get a pick from Solar, but it's not coming. Frozen's got shield plus plant, and he's getting it down in, and there's just 2 kills already. Suddenly, Shoobs have no response to how fast they're moving. Frozen gets it down, and he'll scamper back away. First death is Raki. Teddy trying to be the difference maker here. But the problem is it's 2 guns to 4 because Exige opted for a clash that Freezer saw and just said, you know what? We're not going to concern ourselves with it. Now he'll whip the gun back out, trying to make it a little bit more of a difference here, but he'll die before he can even get a shot off. Ying's got his cross. Ark's got 2 from the same spot, and he might have 3 if Schmick comes right in, but he doesn't. He's going to hold firm. Might have Frozen, but Volino's got him from the back, and suddenly the Freezer have just taken control of this map again. Keep begging for a tryout. Unfortunate. If you're Shoobs, I think you've identified that there's a bit of a pacing problem, but I do love the fact that Freezer noticed, hey, there's a clash. Clash isn't playing on site. We can just move right in as soon as we have an opening. Freezer saw it, they took it, good intel. Understood that trying to face a clash, especially before, I mean, I think I've seen something about Clash maybe not being able to spark people anymore. I'm not sure. There might be some things coming in CGX we're gonna have to pay attention to. But Freezer have opened up really good here. 3 rounds in a row on an attacking side after we saw Shoobs take very firm control with 4 rounds in a row on their defense. But in the first half, it looked like Shoobs were just feeling the Freezer out a little bit. Again, they 7-1 in the open qualifier, won 2 straight best of 3s to get here. Very little, if any, footage, maybe Twitter clips on Freezer coming into this game. So Shoobs had almost no intel, and it took 2 rounds to understand the way that they were playing defensively, and then dismantled it piece by piece. But now the guns are coming alive for Freezer. Valeno open with a 4K, and he's continuing to put the work in. He's up to 9, Racky's at 8, Ark's at 7. And everyone on SPACESHOOBS, despite everyone being relatively even, that's not going to matter when the strats just look like everything has progressively been falling apart here very, very slowly.
There we go. Okay, I think I'm good now. And I just
there you go.
I walk into an execute Arc with another opening kill. Wolfsburg, he's able to trade it back quickly. And again, I mean, this is kind of a thing where SPACESHOOBS, they cannot continue with this momentum, and losing Toaster so early on isn't going to be necessarily the worst case, but losing that Ram can be able to use a couple of those boogie drones herself, but just losing that firepower behind Rack is going to be something that a trade-off relatively.
Well, Ark is just continuing his rampage, and down goes Wolfsburg. So again, another situation where SPACESHOOBS only have 2 guns to Freezer's 4 until Exige makes a swap. So him and Teddy will hold on to top stairs as long as they can, and maybe try to force Valeno into a bad pick. But now the Mute's going to run away. Clash will hold on to this for as long as possible and just feed intel to the last 2 guys he has left. And Schmink is also all alone on A, trying to hold bottom west main into Boiler for as long as he's able to. Freezer can take time and just keep on droning, or get an opportunity for a hatch drop and maybe do exactly what Blackbeard was doing last time they were trying to attack on this one. Zez will grab Teddy, so it's only 1 gun to 4 until Exige makes this switch. It's just looking worse and worse for Shoobs at this point.
Yeah, 2v4, really no opportunities. Also Exige, not a bad gun necessarily, but he's going to be really slow, not going to be able to move around a whole lot.
40 seconds to go. Schmick will hold his blue angle. He had to have seen the Monty moving back in there. Exige has dropped the shield. He takes down Arc. So his reign of terror is over for this round, but now it's shield on shield crime, and they both advance on one another, so it all falls to Schmick to try and get picks while the shields are paying attention to each other. A little bit of HP damaged off Frozen, but now Exige will whip the gun back up, but again, there's still the Monty to deal with, but he downs Frozen. There's an opportunity now for Shoobs to get in here. 10 seconds, so 20 seconds to go. Schmink grabs Valeno. Frozen's been down, and suddenly it's just Zez. Freezer had an opportunity, and it looks like they might have thrown this away. Frozen can't get rezzed. He's caught in the middle of fear gas. He has to move into blue. Exige just calls out. He knows exactly where he is. Tells Schmink to hide, but instead he makes the peek, but it's not going to matter because Clash is still alive. Shoobs escape with 1, and we're tied up. We're going to break point.
Just when you thought that the Freezer was going to run away with it, a phenomenal 2v4, 2v5 situation there for SPACESHOOBS. Jake Allen, the future himself, also playing perfectly over by that pillar position, getting rid of that shield play in a round where, again, we have now seen 3 consecutive attacking rounds where whether or not it's SPACESHOOBS forcing them to, the Freezer consistently go for one-dimensional attacks. Even when they have a 2 to 3 body man advantage, they still don't go and try to attack from multiple different points. Sure, it did take 3 rounds eventually for SPACESHOOBS to catch on and then use that to their advantage, but it is probably one of the best times you could do it, taking away their ability to get that 6-4 lead, and now even it out, at least for now, by 5.
Lead the full 12 on this bad boy, which is not what Shoobs would have wanted coming into a map that they've only lost once in the past 2 months and have won it 6 times in both Challenger qualifiers and Challenger itself. And the one round that they've won on defense is, I don't want to call it a miracle play, but it was very skillful play after the initial part of their defense and their extension had been completely dismantled, and it looked like Freezer probably had an opening. And Arc is also on one. Him and Veleno continuing to lead the way, and Racky's got a whole bunch of those secondary kills. He's usually a second guy, at least as far as this second half is concerned. Big Siege will maintain Clash control, top fire plays. Volsper will hold on to Suicide. And again, you don't have a Capitao in this instance, and how else do you take Library without a Capitao? You do it with shields, and there's not a single shield up for Freezer for this one.
Yeah, a little bit of a misread potentially from Freezer. Obviously, they want to bring a lot more of that, info game, having not only Dokkaebi, but also the Brava.
Ooh.
But it's Volsper. You get rid of the Brava, get rid of all of that utility, and get the opening. If we talked about how getting that early advantage, or more importantly, not losing it, it has been for SPACESHOOBS in these first 3 rounds on the side switch. And for this one, at least, they're going to be able to take one. Freezer also not immediately able to get that trade or any refrag. So going into this execution, or this clear on the top floor, with at least a 1-man disadvantage.
3-man over from Library side. Start taking down Breach as fast as they can, but Teddy will deny it for as long as he still has 2 charges left. So that thing might just stay shut for a long-ass time, considering Clash is still here on Piano Double, continuing to be a nuisance, and I'll just keep calling positions because the whole takeover is mezzanine, library, top library, stairs for Freezer, and there's not another dimension to this. It's very one note, but it might still work if they're able to catch somebody from SPACESHOOBS in a bad spot. Maybe it's a downstairs rotate, because Racky is still waiting for someone maybe coming blue side, but I think at this point, SPACESHOOBS have to know no one's or Freezer have to know no one's about to make that push into hallway, given how much time is left on the clock. Good shot for Volsper with 50 seconds to go. Frozen's activated some sends, but I don't think they're going to make a move here quite yet. I don't think they have the space for it.
They don't have the space. It's just not going to be used. As a matter of fact, it's just going to be giving some cover to Volsper. Toaster, not Toaster, but Teddy even taking some space. Smink with another, and it's all falling apart in this round.
Dang. Looked like they had an opportunity, but it was one-dimensional to the last. They pushed over from one side, took Library and Fireplace control, and then just kind of hoped, it felt like, for someone on Shoobs to make a mistake. Frozen will at least ensure that it's not a total flawless round for SPACESHOOBS, but they have forced themselves out of a bad hole. They're up to match point. I think at this point, if you're Freezer, you're hoping Shoobs just... like, you're happy that they can't go back to that one side again, because that was a lockout defense.
We gotta stay up Frozen. And again, even all the way back to the first bit of the round, I talked about how having no shields, having no real utility to push out those defender positions, rather leaning into that info game, was something of a bad read from the Freezer, especially with that utility heavy extension from SPACESHOOBS on that top floor defending kitchen. And that's exactly what happened. There was no spearhead, whether it was a shield, not having that, no utility either in the pockets of the Freezer. So there was really nothing to push those players out. And then you also had a phenomenal, huge round from Volsper. It was kind of just a snowball effect of everything going into the way of SPACESHOOBS. And even with that deficit, they still have a chance to shut down map 1 in regulation.
Somehow that weird deja vu of the first half of Freezer getting a couple rounds that SPACESHOOBS don't really have a counter for, and then SPACESHOOBS figuring it out. It might happen again, even if it took a little bit longer for Shoobs to get back in the driver's seat on this one. And even if the Freezer have overall had a much better attacking half, the fact that Shoobs are the ones that sit on match point right now is enough for the Freezer to try something different to see if they can at least force OT. But again, it's really going to be down to how fast, I guess, they take Library, because there's 4 guys over there. Volsper was in Suicide again, and he leaves again early. Even though it's not the same side, it's still kind of the same approach, and he'll be the one to take down the only shield that Freezer have at their disposal. Wow. Now they've got to be scrambling to look for any other option here.
Yeah, we talked about how they didn't have shields last time. They had a shield this round, but not for long, as Arc's going to fall down very early on. Sure, you are able to get rid of that mirror window, but then Xgichi just pops up a window of his own, that being the Clash of Shield. And wow, it's just a round where Freezer played it necessarily horribly, but they didn't get the timing right. And on the turn side of things, Wolfsburg getting that timing on that drop down and that rotation almost perfectly. And you're going to need somebody to get a kill, get a control, something. Because right now, the Freezer, they're scrambling. They don't really have much of anything to get themselves back into this round. Nonetheless, this game.
Got Library and Mez, so at least the basics to try and take a master on Chalet has been accomplished, but you're dealing with a Clash who can just sit in the corner and feed position after position and ping after ping. Even if there's no one on Shoobs trying to go for a flank that deep, I think it's pretty obvious to Shoobs that the whole take from Freezer was going to be Library, and so far it's just falling apart here. Even if they do get the wall back open and they got some half wall control, Shoobs just have to wait, sit back, give it a sec, and wait for Freezer to try and execute, because Toaster might have a pretty decent spot for a Nitro Cell if he's able to get into position here.
Yeah, I mean, they're just moving so slow. They're not rotating players over to Slayerm or going down below. They're trying to force this bomb to go down inside of Master, but they just don't have the control. They don't really have anything to push out players like Exige, who are just holding them back from this execution.
They might be able to trap Exige. Oh, and they do, because he was stuck between two different firing angles, and suddenly your shield is gone, but it's a 1-for-1 trade on the shields at 2 minutes apart, and it's still 4 guns against 4 with 30 seconds to go. Half wall is open for the taking, but not from the angles that Shoobs are going to be holding in these last 25 seconds. Valeno will wait for his opportunity to swing piano. There's one right there waiting for the window. There's a fight happening all at the same time, but now it becomes a 2v2 out of nowhere because they all traded each other. Valeno and Raki have to move and grab diffuser, but at this point it might just be playing for a frag game, and Teddy's just gonna sit behind the desk, wait for them to come to him. He does down him though. That one player's been taken out of commission, so suddenly Raki just has to stay alive. He's looking for his opportunity to move back into the closet, and he does find him, but it's just too late. Nomad found him, but not with any time left on the clock, and the first map of the finale goes to SPACESHOOBS.
His crosshair was on his head. If he just had a second more on that clock, we could have gone into overtime. But again, because they moved so slow after losing that first initial pick, SPACESHOOBS just all falling back down to the bomb site, allowing for the Freezer to waste their own time, never in a hurry to really make any big decision. Sure, you were able to catch Exige on that cross over by that piano window, but by the time he died, not only was there 30 seconds left on the board, but it's not like missing a Clash necessarily was a huge problem for the defense. That was his job, that was his goal, to eventually waste time, or at least he knew that he was going to more than likely die. And it's a situation, because that attack was so slow, I mean, there just really was no opportunities aside from that execution.
Credit where credit is due for Freezer to find a way to make that last round execute work, despite losing a shield as the first guy that you're trying to move into a site, and suddenly he dies immediately. They gave it a try, but still 7-5. Shoobs escape with a now 7-1 record on Chalet over the past 2 months. So for them, just don't take it to that map, because I think they've got that stuff figured out. But for the Freezer, not the end of the world. They've still got their pick, which they themselves have not lost on since they formed just a couple of weeks ago. We'll get that coming up after a very short break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with map 2. The first series of the finale is going the way that we expected it probably would, though it gave us a bit of a heart attack. SPACESHOOBS picked into Chalet, having a phenomenal record on it, and almost lost it a couple of times because Freezer opened both halves with a couple of round streaks that had us questioning whether Shoobs really were gonna pull things together, even if they didn't have Scoob on the team anymore. They finally did. They managed to make things work, and it's a 7-5, even though Freezer gave it a pretty valiant effort.
Yeah, you can really tell that the Shoobs are still going through a lot of growing pains. This is a first map that probably could have gone a lot smoother for them, but just a couple of bad plays, especially 0-2 start after that side switch, but a phenomenal 2v5 for the team, especially XGS going huge. The Clash, I guess, was the answer for their defense, because after they brought it, they just didn't win or didn't lose. But now going on to Bank, a map that both teams are very familiar with, especially the Freezer being one of the reasons that they picked into it.
I think we've seen what not banning shields will do on a map that's a lot smaller than Bank, but in a case like this, I do feel like your options for what you can do on Bank are a little bit more expansive if you want to try for something like a Blackbeard ban, especially for window pressure, if you want to take a Monty off the board so that you're not forcing up into Office very effectively or down to Freezer. We've just seen that these guys are both very willing so far to say shields are fair play, we'll ban other stuff so you don't have to worry about that, but you do have to worry about shields because it's like you said, as soon as XGS picked up Clash, they started winning rounds on defense, and that's how they closed out map 1.
Yeah, and also one thing that I noticed that we didn't really get a chance to talk about was the Freezer going out of their way to ban that Capital, and then round after round, not having the utility needed to clear space, especially in those extensions. Like a couple of rounds, Volsper, did them a favor, gifted them that map control, dropping down a hatch, eventually taking the pick away onto the Blitz all the way into that last round. But it's kind of a situation where there were, even though it was a very close match, it really well could have gone in overtime. Literally, if there was just one more second on the clock, it probably would have. But there was a lot of rounds and engagements where the Freezer just didn't have the right read going all the way before the round even started.
We'll see if the same remains for Bank, as this one is the Freezer's pick. They played it 3 times in qualifiers to make it to the finale. They won it all 3 times. Against who kind of doesn't matter. I think a 3-0 record on one map is ultimately kind of enough proof that you know what you're doing. But Shoobs, I've only played it once in CL and CL quals, and they lost it. So for the Freezer, good to at least know that you've got a good handle on this map. And for Shoobs, only one map played, one time. I don't even know if it was on stream, so there may not even be footage of how Shoobs played this map out. And already we're seeing it change. There will be no Monty play, at least for map 2.
Yeah, SPACESHOOBS sticking behind that Deimos ban, the Freezer banning Clash.
XGS target ban, it's happening.
I mean, honestly, I agree with that. That is a problem that after, I believe it was like 2 or 3 rounds in a row for SPACESHOOBS, they didn't really have an answer, and then going for Castle, a ban more targeted towards Bank specifically. But again, I think it's kind of a situation where if we're looking at that ban phase, taking that Clash was kind of a ban that maybe the Freezer had something else planned, but they were now forced to ban that Clash because they didn't really have an answer for it on map 1.
And immediately we get thrown into a tech. So we'll take a second. We'll see how long it takes for us to get into things, actually. But yeah, I think the Clash would have been a semi-effective ban on this map, I think, like 3 to 4 years ago. It almost screams that they're playing that or doing that specifically so that they don't let Jake Allen play it. But I could totally be wrong. There might have been something else that Shoops had up their sleeve as to why they would want Clash off the board first. But if it's just as simple as that and 2 shields gone, you have a Deimos removed from play, so it's the second map in a row that's not up. So it does leave plenty of options still here, at least for ops that are pretty commonly banned. Cade will still be here to keep hatches closed for as long as humanly possible, which is huge. And then Valk was also banned last map, and that's available too on a map where you kind of need as much intel as you can possibly get. And if you're not about to get it with shields, then you're going to get it with cams at some point whenever Shoops decide that they want to use it. A lot for Echo to start out here and probably just keep Siege as far back away from side as they can. That, or just as soon as he's done setting up upstairs, just put him in vault and just have him sit there until he has the opportunity to use the yokai for more area denial. But already looking like a much different approach for map 2 from both squads here.
Yeah, and then this is a map that last time, at least the Freezer played it on stream. They had a 4-1 attack after the side switch. So this is a map specifically starting on the attack that they are confident in. They've shown that they are consistently good. But we talked about how that Clash ban's coming up in play. Last time around, they banned Cade. Cade now on the board because Clash was, you know, kind of swapped over. And not really too heavy into shield play. Obviously, you do have a Blackbeard Frozen leaning onto that. Eddie also just rotating up fairly fast, still having a couple of his own mines on that top floor to play spoilers and just waste a little bit of time. But so far, this is a very quick rotation back down to the bomb site from SPACESHOOBS.
Tons of time for them to do that. Volsper wants to stick to top blue with smoke. That's his prerogative. Don't see it happen nearly as often as we did a couple years ago, but it's still a powerful option to hold on to server stairs. Frozen's already moved in. They've understood exactly how much top floor control they've got. And they've got all the time in the world now to set up this approach. Whether they want to drone through vault to make sure that there's nobody there, or if they want to take the blue approach, if they want to say screw everything and go garage, come down marble. The options are pretty open because SPACESHOOBS have given themselves the ability to watch all of them at the same time, but probably don't have nearly as reliable an ability to help somebody out in the event that the push were to come from one angle. It's probably going to force someone off of something that they're watching in order to really hardcore focus on whatever approach Freezer want to go for. But they themselves, with just over 2 minutes left, I'm not sure if they know where they want to go quite yet.
Yeah, you can see that they're eyeing, trying to take that blue position. For now, Volsper's going to be denying that space, still residing on these top blue stairs. Still has, you know, one of his smoke babes in his pocket that he can still waste time. It really looks like he's playing here to either die or potentially get a pick. And if he can waste time, get a pick, then rotate back down to the bomb site, which in turn wastes even more time for the attack, more than they already are wasting on their own, I mean, that's going to be something that's going to be crucial. But Arc is just waiting for a flank that probably will never happen.
Volsper is just going to hold on to top blue the entire round, essentially, until something forces him back. The nade will do it for a second, but that's not where this primary approach is. We're so focused on this 1v1, and he does grab Arc finally, but the rest of the pressure is coming from Vault side and from an elevator drop, and it's 2 and 2 on both sides as now they try to move in. Schmink will work over elevator. Both parts of elevator are suddenly just immediately obliterated, and now Zez and Valeno in real bad spots here. Oh, but there is... Oh, no, that's really unfortunate. 10 seconds to go. They do still have diffuser control. Zez will move right in. A 1v2 while he tries to plant, but Siege goes into garage. He's got a yokai drone and just has to force him for another second to come off the plant. It looked like Freezer were going to save it, and they forgot the Echo was up.
Oh, what a phenomenal round. Just as Teddy said, a phenomenal round of discipline from SPACESHOOBS, going all the way back to that position where Volsper was holding on blue stairs with the smoke. Didn't get too antsy, didn't swing over into pillar, just waited his time, allowed for that recruit to just walk into the crosshair of his Mossberg, and going all the way down to Siege, waiting for that Echo drone. In another round where the problem with the Freezer moving way too slow on the attack now has carried on, you could even say lingered onto map 2, and that's something that SPACESHOOBS absolutely ate up.
I mean, you have one guy pressuring blue, and then Volsper's used like all of his smokes at that. I would have called it like bad utility usage because he was probably expecting more people to be on that side. But the last second call is 2 guys vault drop, 2 guys elevator drop, and Shoobs are all over that. Like, you're flicking back from the elevator position back to vault so quick that it almost takes it apart. But the reason that you leave the smoke top blue is because you've got area denial on nitro cells and the echo in your back pocket to wait for that execute to happen. So I think as soon as you noticed that there was somebody top blue, you probably should have also had reason to expect that there would have been an echo in play or something else to deny, especially if Goyo wasn't a factor in that round. So SPACESHOOBS sussed that one out. Freezer tried at the last moment, but now we move upstairs, and we'll see how well Freezer responds to this. They do have both a Kali and a Blackbeard for window play, so I don't think Shoobs are going to be able to really hold very much of this top floor for very long.
I think it is really going to be a round where it just comes down to how SPACESHOOBS react to that, what they decide to do if they want to try to play really aggressive in these windows, potentially try to find a pick onto either Frozen or Valino, but I just don't think that's something that they necessarily need to do! Exeech, what are you doing, man? That is not the answer! And because of it, not only are you going to lose your IGL, but you're going to lose that first opening pick to absolutely nothing. You get nothing out of that.
Look, I can understand first floor runouts, just not on Bank. They're going to see you coming from 2 miles away, but I do think Exeech knew that. I think he knew it was a risk, gave it a try, and there is an answer. Teddy takes down Raki. And now, at least even the odds momentarily, trying to see if they can't force Teddy out of Kanto, but he'll hold fast to the elevator shaft. And how often do we see this? A shield working up red stairs? Never seen this before, ever, in my life. Absolutely, no, just a joke. You've got one in office to worry about. The crossback from Kanto in the elevator is also something that he'll need to pay attention to. Kali holding long angles here. We'll see how this first engagement happens. There's the Blackbeard up with the ace right behind him, but he shoots the shield and Frozen gets the headshot. And he's still got coverage from Zez right behind him. They can work over banana control. They can get something in office unless Mira has something to say about it from just across the wall here.
And this is a round where you have everything in your favor. You just need to know about the position where Toaster, and they relatively know where both Toaster and Volsper are. May not be fully aware of Schmink, but if SPACESHOOBS can just get one and take advantage of the Freezer kind of just stalling in this last half of the round.
Just waiting for their moment to push here. But no nitro cells left up. It'll all come down to gunfights, and there's still a Blackbeard on the board and a Kali shooting from God knows where that you'll just have to make sure you don't pop your head up in a bad spot. So it might be a 3v3 with guys in the building because of where Kali is right now. Still moves in. Volsper gets the first one. Down falls the ace. Blackbeard's taken office control and has an idea on one player, but still needs to pay attention to his right-hand side because the Mira might come out and surprise him. Just a matter of when do they push into sight. They're trying. Ark and Valeno both grab one. It's just Sminkin meeting. 10 seconds to go. Can he stall? There is no diffuser control, but Ark goes right in, finds him in Janitor, and saves that one for Freezer.
That's a round where, in my opinion, sure, the Freezer won it, but they were the team that played it poorly, especially comparing to SPACESHOOBS. It is now another round where the Freezer continuously play too slow. They start to stall. The main problem that time around was, one, they didn't have a multi-directional push, just trying to force their effort. The player on the side windows, a majority of that push over by Banana on top of spiral stairs. But on top of that, they didn't have any info on these last three players. They didn't really want to take that big step into the bomb site. They didn't want to make that big decision and then potentially walk themselves into a crossfire that, sure, the defense did have set up, and it just came down to a flurry of kills. SPACESHOOBS, all of their comps not being on point, and then kind of the Freezer just running in, clustering those comps. I think if this is a situation where the Freezer can continuously force SPACESHOOBS into just an absolute cluster of an execution where they don't really have time to react and they just have to rely on their individual skill, and then their positioning is not good, then you could start to see the Freezer get a leg up here. But I mean, this just slow attack is not working out.
I'm also going to say it now. That's the one time Exeech can go for that garage run out. If he tries it another time, the one thing I would hate for Shoobs is if they realize that being man down to start a round ends up being a catalyst from map to map, and it carries over even if Chalet plays differently from Bank. So for their sake, they need to ensure that they can grab that first pick or in the best position possible to get it in every round, because it was a real problem on Chalet. If that also becomes a problem in map 2, then that's going to be the thing that the Freezer, because they're all gunners, they can exploit that pretty easily.
Again, you can see a lot more utility being brought out to just really clear. You have obviously the Ram to set up vertical. You have both the nades on Frozen and Arc, obviously the Nash, kind of self-explanatory there. So there is just a lot of attacking utility just to clear this top floor. And to be fair, there is a lot of defender utility that needs to be cleared. But yet again, another round where SPACESHOOBS had a heavy extension, but they fall off it relatively early on, giving a little bit of that respect and a lot of map control to the Freezer.
Yeah, they came off it quick. But the issue is it's 2 R4Cs and one of them's got boogie drones. Nitro, ooh, very close, but it really only tickles Arc for a second. And there's still 3 left. There were 4 total Nitros for SPACESHOOBS, so they've got tons of opportunity to just wait for Freezer to come through a doorway or maybe down a hatch drop at some point. So they came prepared for this, and also probably assuming that there was going to be a shield in play, and there is. But just bear in mind that with a minute 30 to go, Freezer have all of this top floor control, and the one thing they probably don't expect is Exceed down marble stairs with a flank potential, and he's also got coverage from Teddy, who's all the way back in Tellers, so both of them are just going to wait for their opportunity to strike as the Freezer tries to figure out where they want to push from.
Yeah, it's going to be another round where it just comes down to if the Freezer have enough info. Actually having a drone in his pocket. Yeah, I actually saw Teddy. They're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on Crossfire if he isn't able to. But out of all that, it's actually Exige to lose his life. But Teddy in a situation where he's not going to make it out of here alive. He needs to try and take at least one pick. But Bavlino is going to make sure that's not possible.
Both flanks dead. Still 2 Nitros up in the event that Shoobs can deny. They've stalled out to 45 seconds, and Freezer still need to figure out what their push is. It's probably going to be Beepers, given where they're at, and Tubarao is holding stock hatch closed still. So that just might be their only real angle of approach, unless they want to try and open up Archives wall at the same time. Still all 5 guys up for Freezer. But with only 20 seconds left, this seems like the one approach that they've got. As soon as this comes in, Frozen will be first man in, looking for a pick, but there's a mirror window to try and counter it. Raki cross map is going to have the trade. Zez has the opportunity to plant now because both Schmick and Wolfsburg are here, but now they've even the odds. Schmick gets the kill and then runs back into Beepers, and Wolfsburg never got cleared from this position. Ark has to rush back up and hope someone's there waiting for him, but he is with a gun instead. Somehow, Shoobs turned that sucker around.
That's now like 2v5s that SPACESHOOBS have somehow just grabbed out of the depths of hell. Freezer had everything going their way. Again, I talked about how they really wanted to try and force SPACESHOOBS into just an absolute cluster of an execution, giving them little no time to react, essentially putting it down to whether or not SPACESHOOBS had those strong enough crossfires set up and everything. Even the crossfires weren't really strong. You had a 2v5, but just kill after kill just missed. Bolsper going absolutely huge yet again in a round where the Freezer are going to be sent down to basement, scratching their heads, wondering exactly what went wrong. And to be honest, a lot of it did.
They had clearance to plant from the double door. It was there. They could have gone behind the counter very quickly. Abana could have scampered in and gotten plant down. But not only does his coverage die first, it's still Wolfsburg holding on to Printer for dear life and not letting anybody back through that door. They turned a 3v5 around perfectly. So now for Freezer, even if you like Bank, there are rounds like that that'll be absolute tilters. Shoobs also had a pretty perfect handle on lockers last time they were down here in round 1. So phenomenal start for Shoobs. If they're able to get a 4-2, they're looking great. But honestly, given the way that they're able to save some of these rounds and how Freezer look like they don't have their attacks nearly as dialed in as Shoobs have their defenses, we could be looking at something like a 5-1. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that's the pace that Shoobs are working at currently.
Yeah, I mean, in SPACESHOOBS, talk about pace. They've been reading this pace perfectly. I talked about how they've fallen off really heavily, and to be fair, there wasn't really a heavy extension this round over an open area. And just, again, another round where SPACESHOOBS, they understand that the Freezer wastes a lot of their time in that early 2 minutes to minute 30, and they can just kind of force the Freezer attack into a really awkward execution because they just don't take the time that they're given to. This time around, putting a lot more pressure on this blue stairs position. Also, hopefully, using Frozen as that spearhead to try and potentially clear this position that, yet again, Wolfsburg's playing. And if you allow for him to just sit here for the entirety of the round, he's going to do exactly that.
Yeah, it might be a totally identical defense from SPACESHOOBS, so I think Freezer need to at least be aware that Echo could be on the board if they didn't spot him out in the intel phase. Because the smoke is up here, the air raid denial on site has to kind of come from something. But Freezer didn't devote too much to blue. Instead, they went and opened up a couple different hatches, gave themselves the ability to work through several different site takes all at the same time, but Shoobs were also prepared to at least have one guy watching every potential site take, and then didn't really concern themselves too much because they were able to rotate back quickly and stop an elevator and a vault drop. So what do you do here if you're Freezer? Volsper this time will actually peek the doorway, but it's right into a Blackbeard, and he doesn't have any toxic babes left. He's just trying to get one kill before the end. He'll shoot Blackbeard in the foot, but he's still alive. There comes the nade and finally gets cleared out because of the hatch drop. So now Arc will open things up, but Volsper's wasted a lot of time here.
Yeah, he's wasted 2 minutes. He's done his job. Sure, he's lost his life. He hasn't been able to take one away from the Freezers in that process. But now everything's going down. You have that mirror on that default wall, so they're not going to be able to open that. They're just going to have to hit the go button.
Blackbeard is going to try and clog the hole as much as he can. Teddy will grab Arc, though. Diffuser's going down. Still opportunity for intel denial. Both Nitro cells are still up, but Toaster and Schmink are going to work here. Might not even have to use them because now it's all on Zez. Does he have the ability to grab at least one pick and maybe force him back? Nope, there's the Nitro. Shoobs had it perfectly read, and they're looking like they might run away with Banks' first half here.
I mean, you have hatch open, you have a Blackbeard, and it still takes you, I guess you could say 2 minutes, but relatively in the position they had, an entire minute to just clear Volsper with a Mossberg and his smoke babes. It is really not that hard. There's no Wamais, there's no shield, there's nothing denying you aside from his shotgun in his pocket utility, and somehow Freezer still waste essentially the entire round. And then when they go back down to server, because they didn't send someone through dirt, whether or not they were aware of it or not, they weren't able to get that default wall open, to get that default plan down inside of servers, and it just came down to falling down to those crossfires. And it's a situation where I could talk about problem after problem. I mean, the Freezer, because they're moving so slow, giving so much time, centuries almost, for SPACESHOOBS to then react and change up their positioning to counter what the Freezer are doing. I mean, there is really no chance for them in these rounds.
They do have the ability to course correct. The one round they won was second floor. They won office last time, so they'll try CEO again. Oh, I mean, SPACESHOOBS will. Not like attacks can dictate what the site. Never mind. But I'm not sure how much of a difference it'll make here. Obviously, Kali plus Blackbeard is great if you're trying to force Windows plus Red Stairs pressure again. They were flirting with a Capital. They opted for a Grim instead. And then Buck from below can maybe force more defenders out of the shadows that they're currently hiding in. But again, it's not like they're going to be really able to hold on to any of these windows anyway, because there's a Kali up who could just shoot them out from those angles at any moment. So it's a decent attacking lineup. The question is, do SPACESHOOBS have any other answer for how they position themselves? Because that was ultimately what lost them round 2 on the same site.
Yeah, so far to start this round, you can see that they're playing a lot more passive aside from Volsper, but I mean, he plays like this almost every round, and to be fair, how he has had success, it is a given that he probably should. But again, the rest of the team playing a lot more passive, no wonky runouts from Exige or now Teddy on that Jaeger, and also no real heavy extension outside of stock. So if they just open that wall, even if they don't really need to open it, get that position inside of square, clear out stock, that's a position that's very free.
At this point, it's really just trade a couple bullets back, see if someone hits something, and Teddy does. There we go. Arc was a hero maker last time they played this site, and now he'll have to sit down and watch from the sidelines. And Teddy, all the way outside, manages to get back in. I think in most circumstances he wouldn't get away with that, and Valeno does not let him get away with that, but there's just nobody on the windows to grab Teddy before he runs back into ATMs. But they settle for not having a Jaeger run out garage, and instead they have him run out the usual way and still die.
Yeah, apparently there was a Claymore there that just completely missed him. The C4 in the pocket of Schmink, but it's actually Toaster to get one. And you can see yet again the Freezer, because they don't have the info needed, they're starting to stall.
40 seconds. They don't have the ability to use a Buck from below anymore. And it looks like they've not done enough to clear these positions out reliably enough for SPACESHOOBS. They can just sit in the spots they've been in all round. And even if Zez and Frozen can get 1 or 2 kills here, they still have 2 other guys on Shoobs. They're going to have to dig out on this defense. 30 seconds left. Volspur just pops back up top square, and they probably have an idea the last guy's still in stock, because that's exactly where Volspur's looking. Zez might be able to catch the Valkyrie, but it's probably wraps on this one. 4-1 for Shoobs. And if they can get that 5-1, then it looks like they might be able to take the first series of the finale without too much of a battle from the Freezer.
I mean, it is really getting dire here. Freezer even understanding they're going to take this timeout, that they need at least
Wait, a timeout on round 5? Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think the best case scenario here for the Freezer is to use this timeout to say, just pull out some kind of strat that they haven't pulled out so far this map to try to get this last map, and then set up the context for the sides. If they only use this timeout to get 2 rounds on the first half, then I'm going to start to criticize them a little bit. But I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is round after round going into execution, the Freezer have at least 4 drones. That round they had 5 drones in their pocket, and they just didn't use it. And because they didn't use that drone economy that they had in their pocket, they didn't get the info needed, they're dying to players that they're not even aware of their positioning. And it's kind of a situation where, sure, I can really say that, oh, you just need to use info, but there's really nobody on the Freezer going out of their way to just simply be the player to drown.
All I'm saying is Shoobs have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever and do what Mint does post timeouts and be like, okay, hey, we know there's only 1 more round on defense. We know they're going to go staff. If he had just gone tellers, I'm just saying, if he had just gone tellers just to mess up anything that they could have discussed in that timeout. But Freezer are confident that they can get 1 more round on an attack before they move over and try to defend on a map that, again, they are 3-0 on.
Yeah.
In order to get to the finale to begin with. They understood what it took to get here. There were a couple of maps that they were undefeated on, and this was one of them. But for Shoobs to come in and have this much of an impact this quickly, even if a couple of them were hero plays, it's not something the Freezer have been able to bounce back from quite yet.
And to be fair, we've criticized a lot about the Freezer, but they're not a bad team. They nearly went flawless in the quals, even beating underagers, which, keep in mind, are currently a team not only in the finale, but in their group. They have beaten teams to get here that are also right next to them. And it's kind of a thing where I just don't think they were really prepared for just the experience, the structure that SPACESHOOBS has set up. To be fair, SPACESHOOBS also having quite a bit of their own growing pains. But it's a situation where it just really does look like SPACESHOOBS are just completely outmatching them. So
See what kind of response they bring. First round with no shields. So they'll take top floor control with 2 R4Cs again. Frozen will opt for a Bravo, which in this case, the primary counter is the Maestro. I think that's probably a case of as soon as you see Maestro bubbles are in play, you just kind of have to take the Bravo at that point. Oh, but no, 1 clutch drone's already gone. And I don't know if the first one was able to take any utility already, so that pick might end up being a real pain in the ass for Freezer if they're not able to get anything with that clutch, whether it be 1 or 2 fear gas canisters or at least 1 Maestro bubble somewhere, then you might end up really regretting not having a shield on this last attack here.
yeah, I mean, this is a complete contrast to how SPACESHOOBS has played the entirety of this first half. I talked about how round after round, especially on bomb sites where it requires an extension, that they fall back, they give that pressure, they allow for this map control to just be put up on a platter for the Freezer. But this is one of the very first times where they're staying a little bit longer, trying to play spoilers, and so far the Freezer, they're not prepared, as you spoke about, not having a shield, not really having a spearhead. Those boogie drones also not going to be able to have any effect whatsoever if you can't even get yourself inside of stock. But now eventually, after all that, SPACESHOOBS, they have retreated from this top floor, given it to the Freezer, but a lot of time has been wasted, nearly 2 minutes now off the board.
Yeah, they retreated and didn't give up any picks, and there's still a basement flank. Someone from Shoobs is downstairs waiting for a chance to just pop up blue at the worst possible moment for Freezer. So there's a lot of elements to this. Yep, Teddy's downstairs. He'll just stick in server, waiting for his chance or waiting for a call. As soon as he knows someone's about to push from kitchen side, then that's when he'll make his move. But Raki may at least know that there's someone down here, or just wants to put a gun down here in the event that someone does make this push. 40 seconds to go. Waiting for his opportunity, and he catches him lacking. He knew that there was one there. Heard the sound cue, but there's a trade back. Zez gets one, but so does Schminks. Still looking good for Shoobs. 30 seconds left. And it looks like the only real option they've got is to try to go for kills through the archive wall or to push onto the double and go for a plant on kitchen. There's almost no time left for this. Zez does grab the frag though, so he can move in, but there's still one waiting on the breach, just waiting there for him, and everything goes SPACESHOOBs' way because the flank from blue was never countered. It just took Teddy waiting there to give them a 5-1 half, and they're 2 rounds away from closing this one out.
Timeout or not, one thing is certain, and SPACESHOOBs getting that 5-1 half that you kind of foretold. You sprinkled that on almost as you know, a magician or somebody with.
I didn't want to curse him. But I genuinely, I'm like, I don't know what the Freezer are doing here. It's got to be a 5-1.
I mean, it is really a sense where there wasn't one thing or one identity that the Freezer used to cause problems for SPACESHOOBs. Still a lot of shields on the board, having the ability to play both a Blackbeard and a Blitz. Not playing into either of those. We talked about how SPACESHOOBs in that last defensive round for themselves switched up the pace, playing a little bit longer, an additional, I'd say, around 30 to 45 seconds on that extension, not giving a lot of that respect, falling back to the bomb site as they did in previous rounds, and because of it, it wasted a lot of time. They didn't use that info, allowing for that flank all the way from basement from Teddy to have an effect. It's kind of a situation where every round I have a new problem to talk about that I could probably spend 2 to 3 minutes on. And there's just no way you can fix this in just one best of 3.
No, but I do think they have at least an idea on what problems they would need going into whatever their second match is. But can you course correct? When they played this in quals, by the way, were they more of a defensive or an attacking team?
They won 3 rounds on the defense and then won 4 on the attack.
Okay, so arguably their stronger side is the one that they got doused on. Well, doesn't help. But they'll try to hold on a defense for. I mean, hey, if they're able to counter at least, like, Shoobs have demonstrated that they lose rounds when they are first picked. So if Freezer can get somebody on Shoobs in a weird spot and get someone either ISO'd or just a very quick opening frag and then fall back quickly before Shoobs can get someone in position to trade, regardless of how fast Shoobs end up going on this round or not, that might end up being the one thing Freezer have been able to rely upon in this series. If Shoobs die first, then they probably don't come back.
You know, the problem, though, for the Freezers, you have to win those gunfights, something they haven't really had that much success on here on Bank Schmink, though. Going for a really aggressive take inside of Garage, he's able to make his way behind that little truck. There is a glimpse of an idea. Freezer know that there's somebody in here, but they don't know how many. They don't know if they're still in there. They're just going to fall off. They're not going to try to really aggress on that Schmink, using the smoke to try and clear space, but it's Volsper for the very first pick, getting rid of that mirror so early on. A C4 now out of the pockets of Freezer with Volsper 2 now.
Now they know that the glass is in play, did see the hatch drops, and now they know that reinforcements have come back to try and stall for as long as they can. Arc will grab Teddy and put them in a better spot. Valeno does grab Schmink, and suddenly Toaster's also dead, so the glass pressure from Garage does nothing in the end, and it means Volsper and Exige, they can still claw something back here, because Arc is in a really bad spot, but they will need to worry about the rest of the fear gas stalling for time. Those last 2 bits of HP for Arc, doused by the frag grenade, but there's still a nitro up for Frozen, and now he's moving in position behind the mirror window to try and use it here.
Yeah, you have 50 seconds. You have plenty of time to potentially not only bait the C4 out, but also potentially maybe bait out a swing from one of these Freezer defenders. They are able to get rid of that C4, also open this single wall to potentially try and put down default plant, and with Volsper on that Blackbeard holding you across, this is a very favorable and comfortable position for SPACESHOOBs.
No! How do you stop that? That's the answer! They had the perfect 2 operators to try and post-plant, but Valeno takes a Bonus head off, and now Volsper has to have an answer, and Frozen just gets the headshot. That was a perfect setup for SPACESHOOBs. They had the right ops. They were able to open the wall. They could move right in, and just poor positioning, bad timing. Freezer saved themselves.
Talk about curse. You talk about cursing them. I just cursed them with that round specifically.
No, it looked great. It looked great for Shoobs until it
really
wasn't.
Was. Yeah, it really just was that swing. If he didn't time that perfectly, then probably would have been a SPACESHOOBs round. I talked about a lot of the rounds, especially that last round on Chalet, on map 1. If you just time that a little bit faster, we could have been overtime. Honestly, could have been SPACESHOOBS on the back foot here. But it's just, I think the freezer, we talked about how SPACESHOOBS have been going through a lot of growing pains. Keep in mind that this roster, relatively, I wouldn't say was made for this event specifically, but was made a little bit before. So this team is still relatively new. Also having Frozen, who sure does have quite a history in this game, but he still is relatively new, just coming back to the game. And there is going to be a lot of mistakes, not only specifically in that round, but it's going to just take time to really iron out.
Yeah, not the end of the world. I think Shoobs demonstrated they had enough of a handle on their attack, and then were almost able to save it at the very end. That letting a round like that slip definitely isn't the end of the world. But for Freezer, you're happy you can catch your breath for a second, and it's not just a continual bleed round after round that just forces them into bad decisions or trying to force the issue where it's probably not going to work in their favor. You get one back. And also, by the way, take a look at this, because this is one of the last times you're going to see a Rainbow Six Siege match where repelling is that slow. Have you seen how fast on Siege X these guys are flying around cafe windows and stuff? It's been insane. So this is the last time you're going to see it until a couple of weeks when the Siege X patch finally drops.
Yeah, also last time you're going to see jump outs like Teddy did on his defensive F, nerfing that a little bit. Not as much of a bigger change as the repel glitch, but again, I think it's now a situation where Freezer trying to play on this top 4, Zez trying to waste as much time as possible right behind this mirror window, probably has Janitor's hatch open, quickly just drop it down, but again, it just comes down to the time. He doesn't overstay his welcome, allow for a pick to go their way. And speaking about picks, Teddy and Schmink to get 2 completely untraded.
Oh no, it's a tidal wave. Vel almost lost his life. He's able to force his way back out, and Exige does grab Zedge. It's all falling to pieces now. Suddenly, it's all Frozen. The man who presumably is the reason this team has his name. 4... I mean, I don't really know what you do at this point.
Yeah.
You've lost Nitro. 5 full-strength players are all hunting you down, and they've at least got an idea because there's a Dokubi call in the midst of it. They probably know that there's one printer. That's the first flawless round of the series for SPACESHOOBS, and that right there is series point trying to end the first match of the finale with a dub for the Doges.
Yeah, SPACESHOOBS understanding that first attacking rounds, they just got a little bit antsy, didn't play together. I mean, I think when they had that 5v3 advantage, they had 2 players swing deep from, I believe it was security, just alone. They didn't play off of each other. That round, though, perfectly playing off of each other's bodies, getting those first 2 picks, using that cross continuously, even with getting a heavy 5v3 advantage. They never took their eyes off that janitor's closet, making sure that Zez was never going to leave it. Maybe he would have left with maybe 1 pick, but he was not going to escape that box. And it's a round where SPACESHOOBS, I think I can confidently say, figured out their problems from their very first attack.
See, I didn't know who that was originally, and then based purely on how he's been typing this game, I know it's Teddy. There's no other man who types like he's like his own internal monologue is about to escape his brain more than Teddy in the past couple of months, dude.
So really, he's such a funny guy. He's a fun guy.
He is a fun dude.
Yeah, again, 6-2. It's not looking great for Freezer. I really don't want to be all down in the dumps because, you know, there is always still a potential chance of just how SPACESHOOBS have been playing, and it really does look like they're trying to hit the go button. They got a BB, they got that Ying, even having a Siege with the diffuser, everything. The writing is on the wall that they're trying to move as quick as possible here in this last round, potentially.
Wolfsburg back on black. Already has top stairs control, or sorry, top square control. And now that they've also got Janitor that they're trying to work over, it's going to be just long enough for Zez to drop back down. So a lot of that top floor utility having been surrendered is fine because you've still got 3 Nitros up. 1 more impact that Arc is going to hold on to, presumably just to see if he can't maybe even use it as a distraction. There's also a ton of Candels being used here, plus smoke. If Volsper's in position, they can really hit this quick here. They've got printer control, but the Blackbeard's already been down, but Exige is maybe still in position to get this plant down. It comes down to a 3v3 because Teddy evens the odds again. Teddy back onto double door. Looking for an opportunity to move into beepers. Exige up the hatch grabs too. That was perfect. He'll drop back again because he knows he's got time. And they can probably just look for Valeno to make a bad swing, but he does swing and he'll grab Toaster. Exige back up the hatch again, tries to plant. Teddy's got the cross. They know he had to be back around staff room. Valeno has to have a 1v2 clutch somewhere. Whether they can grab Toaster is a complete unknown at this point. Does notice the feed, tries to take him. No, the Amaro almost doesn't get him, but the Supernova misses. So it's just Teddy. All up against Valeno, but now they're chasing one another down to garage. How is this round just devolved in this way? It's two pistols, a pistol against an SMG. Who wins this round? It ends up being the pistol, but can he get back in time?
He can't.
Does he have it? I don't think he's got it. He forced the issue all the way back to ambulance, and it forces the freezer too far away. SPACESHOOBS walk away with the first best of 3 of the finale with a 2-0 victory.
It was definitely a lot of struggle from SPACESHOOBS, especially on that post-plant 2v1. It was 3v1, but essentially a 2v1 there, but they were able to get it done. A lot of struggles for not only SPACESHOOBS, but obviously for the freezer, and a lot of their problems being exposed today just by the sheer experience and pressure that came from SPACESHOOBS.
So many of those rounds was just SPACESHOOBS from the get-go. Times even when it seemed like there might have been a response, whether it be man count, whether it be strats or timing, something from the freezer just didn't click. So it seems like Shoobs absolutely have themselves dialed in, even if it's not with Scoob. They've got something here with Schmink. It looks like everything for at least this first series worked out pretty darn well. And again, for a team like Freezer, who hadn't lost on Bank all the way through qualifiers, this is one of those maps that you absolutely can now go back and look at and say, something about this one map that we did really well on before, it just ran away from us here. So how did it do that? How can we fix it going into the next couple of series? It's not the end of the world because you still have to play a round robin in your group, so there are plenty of opportunities still to get points, but for Shoobs, that is absolutely the way that you want to open up your first series here.
Yeah, I think this is a matchup where not only do we expect them to win, but we expected them to win in this fashion.
Well, that's all for series number 1. That's all for Goose and myself. Dude, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun jumping in with you for the first time. We hadn't done this before. Could you guys tell? We just did this off rip, and it worked out great. So we're all done here. That's not the end of the broadcast, though. Still one more best of 3 coming up, but it's no sign Kingfisher to take you through it on the other side of the break. Take care.